right, so welcome to my third video. This one's going to be a bit different. It's kind of one that I wasn't planning on doing. I was planning on doing a strawberry video. It ended up being about tomatoes this time, mostly because the one tomato that I purchased, we can bring it up here, that I thought was bruising at the bottom is developing into blossom end rot. So that hadn't been bruising, it had been blossom end rot. So there's a couple of things. The soil that it was planted in isn't soil, it's coco coir, and it looks like that's all it was planted in, was coco coir. That's great for seedlings, it's not great for potted plants. So I'm going to go over a few things that you can do to stop blossom end rot. One, cut away all the fruit that you've got that have blossom end rot. And blossom end rot, the starting phases look pretty much, let's move this down. They look like this, where it's a distinct darkening along the fruit line, and it's right there where the blossom would have been. And it gets to where it starts to really, really rot and gets icky. But it can be stopped. It's usually a calcium deficiency, and I mean, if you're planting strictly in coco coir, you're going to have a calcium deficiency. This particular plant is actually a very, very healthy plant as far as that goes, but its fruit is suffering because it doesn't have enough calcium. So one of the things you can do to rectify that is with a decent fertilizer. I'm not too picky on whether or not it's organic. A lot of people are, but I'm not overly picky about that. My bigger concern is that it has both immediate release and time release. I don't want to burn my plants. So I want both in there in a decent ratio. This one actually contains micronutrients too, but most people go through the NPK with fertilizers. That's not the only things you really got to think about, especially when you're dealing with fruiting plants like tomatoes, where they need more than just that. Tomatoes really do suffer, their fruit suffers pretty good from lack of calcium, which is why a lot of people suggest putting eggs in their planting spot where they plant them, is ground up eggs, which is something I normally do, but obviously I didn't plant this particular one, I purchased it. So I didn't do that with this one. So one of the things is you'll have a guaranteed analysis on, actually with the sun where it's at, let's move this down. So you'll have a guaranteed analysis, and that's going to cover the percentage of what's in the fertilizer. It's not just the macronutrients, which is the NPK. It's also the micronutrients, which this one has. Calcium is its third one, and it's 3% calcium. So it will correct that, hopefully sooner rather than later, because this plant is already fruiting. But this doesn't take too much. This is by Expert Gardener. This doesn't take a whole lot of it to provide nutrients for a plant that's potted. This one has an NPK of 12, 10, and 5. I'm not overly fond of phosphorus in fertilizers. When doing the nerdy part of gardening and horticulture in general, when you start looking at how fertilizers work and how we got the idea that they need phosphorus, they do. But phosphorus tends to be fixed in the soil, so it's not something you really need to add. Most of the time you really don't, and it just causes pollution issues. So I don't tend to go or even care about what the phosphorus levels are. I tend to try to find lower phosphorus levels if I can, unless I have an issue, which I will typically send the soil I've been using for a little while. I'll send to my local extension office to find out if I have a lack. And I've never had a lack in that particular regard. So I don't typically add that intentionally, but most fertilizers do. have a phosphorus amount in them, and that's okay. And most of it's just going to run off. So try to water it kind of carefully, and then you just watch your plants for a couple of weeks to see how it's behaving. This one still has some. I can angle the camera in. Let me see. So it's hard for me to see with the sun in my eyes, but it does have some fruit right here that are actually decent sized that don't have any blossom end rot. So hopefully I caught it in time that I won't lose the entire fruit. We'll see how it goes. If you like this video, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.